Hi everybody, in today's tutorial we're going to add an additional action type to our cutscene system that will allow us to move objects as well as this NPC. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own AARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. Okay, so in our previous video, we built this cutscene system, and in this video, we're going to build a new cutscene action type that's going to allow us to move objects as well as this NPC around the screen. And this one's going to be pretty straightforward, and it's going to illustrate why we built the ability for these cutscenes to have a different playback mode selectable here, because we'll test both of them out in this example. Now, that being said, this tutorial will rely on the previous one, so make sure you're following along. Otherwise, you might be a little confused of where these things are all hooked together. And otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and begin by kind of creating this new action type. And I'm going to go ahead and open this cutscene action, and I'm going to close a few of these scripts. So we've got this cutscene action animation. We're going to make something similar, but it's going to be for moving. So I'm going to go ahead and just show this in the file system so I can get to that folder quickly. And I think I'll just duplicate this one. And of course, the name for this new script will be _move at the end. Like so. And we can open this script up and let's go ahead and give it a few names. So this is going to be called move. It will extend cutscene action, and we want to give it a different icon here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and find those icons. I think I had the folder open. Yeah. And we've got this one with an actor. I'm going to use that. Okay. In addition to this, we're going to make some changes. So we're actually going to remove a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to remove these export values, and I'm going to clear out the play function, because we're going to write our own versions of these for this script. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then looking at our scene here, I want to just add one of these, or in fact, maybe what we do is we add a new dialogue cutscene in between these dialogue texts. And we had this weird bug that presented that seems to be a part of the dialogue system that we saw in the last video, where moving these items, these children of the dialogue interaction, or maybe if it's just moving dialogue text, we sometimes get issues where they don't update in the scene tree, so I had to switch scenes and back to get it to update. And in fact, I'm going to close this dialogue system. And so right now we're going to hopefully be able to avoid that for the most part, but I am going to probably run into that. Let's just start by adding a dialogue cutscene like that. And then I want to move it right up here. And that looked like it moved okay, but I'm just going to toggle scenes and back just to make sure. Okay, so we've got this new dialogue cutscene, and then as a child of this, let's add this new action type. So I'm going to type in move. We've got our cutscene action move, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate these so I have a couple of them. And there we go. Now these aren't going to do anything yet because we haven't coded them up, but we've got this separate section, so we'll be doing sequential or parallel playback, and we'll be able to test that out as we work on this. Now, these already updated to load their icon. If that doesn't happen, if it doesn't load the icon that we included in the script, then you can just go to your project and reload the project. Make sure all your files are saved before you do that, of course, and it should kick those into place. Now, additionally, so that we can test this better, I need to look at this dialogue cutscene. Actually, look, this animation one's broken. Let me go back to my script. I think it thinks we changed the icon on one of these and not the other. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to reload my project right now just so that we clear up, because it looks like that one got kind of confused. Okay, it's reloaded. All my icons are working again, so I think things are good. And let's go ahead. I want to kind of just take a look at this. If we test this right now, this animation is going to fade us completely to black. So let me just demo that real quick, I think. Yeah, and so I think that's okay, but if we want to move stuff, we're not going to be able to see it. So I think I'll just come down to this animation player, and I'm just going to edit my fade to black so that this keyframe doesn't go fully dark. It'll just be like halfway, 0.5, and then we'll do the fade to normal, and we'll adjust this first keyframe as well, 0.5. So it'll fade darker, but it won't go completely out. All right. Okay, there we go. So now we can, when we test this, we can hopefully have a better view of what's happening with this dialogue cutscene that we're going to build here. But before we can really do that, we need to build out this move action, because otherwise nothing is going to happen. Okay, as we start to set this up, I want to build this in such a way that it's somewhat versatile. So there's kind of two ways we could control the speed of the movement that we are going to build here. And one is to give a speed, right? To provide a speed, like we want it to move 200 pixels per second or something like that. The other easy way would be to give it a duration, like we want this movement to last 1 second. And so we'll build this script so that it supports both, and so that we can select, I'm going to give this an enum that we'll call method, and the two methods are going to be duration and speed. Okay, so those are going to be our two methods of movement. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to export a variable that let's see, we're going to call this something like timing method, I guess. And it's going to be of type method that we just defined and created here. And by default, let's go ahead and just set it to the duration version. Okay, so then that's going to help us control how we animate or how we do the timing of this animation. Now we're going to need several other export variables that we're going to have to export here so that it's easy to work with this node once we drop it in. And so let's just go ahead and set all those up. So the first export variable, or I should say the second, but the first new one that we're going to make is going to be a reference to the object that we want to move. So we'll call this object to move. And it's just going to expect something that extends from node 2D, which is going to be should be all of our game objects, really. We're also going to build into this some transitions or easing that we're going to use so that we can, we don't always want linear flat movement. Sometimes we want the movement to speed up or slow down or, look a little bit more smooth. So let's set up some variables for that. We're going to need two, because we're going to be using a tween to do the movement of this, and the tween kind of requires two different values to be set to be able to control that easing and that movement. And so the first is our transition type, and then we'll have a easing method. So let's make a new variable that we'll call transition type. I think I spelled that right. And this is going to be of type tween dot transition type. Okay, and we will set it to a default. So by default, we'll set it to tween dot transition type, and then the default is linear. So we'll pick that. Now these different types kind of determine, some of these are pretty fun. We'll play with them, like bounce. You're probably going to want to use linear for something that starts and stops and has a constant speed. Some of these others, like quadratic, exponential, will give you like an increase over time in the speed or something like that, right? We'll play with those and demo each of them. Let's go ahead and export that other variable I mentioned, which was, let's see, what was it? The ease type. Or easing, let's call it easing method. Now this is also a enum type that comes from our tween class. So we're going to say tween.ease type. And by default, I want to actually set this to ease in out. So this is going to be equal to tween.ease type.ease in out. These will not take effect when our transition type is set to this linear, because it won't be noticeable because it's a constant speed. But as soon as we pick a different one, then it will use this type here. And what ease in out will do is it'll speed up and then slow down, right? So it'll have like a nice natural movement. If something starts moving, it'll start a little bit slow and then it'll speed up. And then when it's just about done, it'll start to slow down. So it'll make it nice and soft. But of course, again, just to reiterate, the default linear, you won't see that. As soon as you change this to something else, you will. Okay, so those are our easing and transition variables that we're going to use. I also we need to provide, obviously, the duration or the speed values. And this might be a lazy way of doing it. We're just going to provide a value that corresponds to each type, each timing method or movement method that we have. So let's go ahead and export. Let's use export range for these. It'll make it easier to work with. So the first range we want to export is going to start at 0 and go to 10. And so that's our minimum and maximum, and have a step of 0.05. And this is going to be for our move duration. I also want to use a suffix on this. So I'm just going to say something like S, because that's going to be a duration in seconds. And so we can go ahead and say variable move duration, which will be of type float. Oops, not quotes. Float equals, and then I think by default, I'm going to set it to half a second. Okay, we'll go ahead and I'm going to copy this whole line, paste it, And this will be for the speed. Now the speed's going to be a totally different range, however. So we'll have it default to 200. The minimum, I think a minimum speed should be about 10. And this is going to be in pixels per second is how this will translate. I'll put the maximum to 1,000, I think. And then this step will do 1. And then this suffix here will be pixels per second, like that. And of course, we need a unique name. And this is not going to be move duration. This is going to be move speed. There we go. And I'm going to add in one more variable. We're going to use it later. And this is going to be used specifically when we're animating or moving an NPC who's going to have an animation to play back. Okay. And so this variable is going to be called animation speed factor. This is a float. And by default, we're going to set it to 40. And you'll see when we hook this up. But essentially what we're going to use this for is we're going to use this to take our movement speed and adjust the speed of the animation playback accordingly. So like if we have an NPC and he's walking slow, then his animation should play back slow. If he's moving really fast, then his walking movement should be quite fast. And this factor is just going to help us keep that in sync with our different animations on our NPC. So you may want to be able to tweak this maybe for different NPCs or different object types that you extend this to support in the future. Okay, so we're going to have a couple other additional variables here. And first one is going to be a target location. So we're essentially going to build in a few variables that just help us track, distance, direction, etc. And so obviously this first target location is going to be a vector2, and we'll set it equal to vector2.0. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this because the next variable will also be a vector2. It's just going to be the move direction, so it'll be kind of similar. And then lastly, we want a distance to our target. And these are going to be useful for doing some of our calculations. Okay. I'm sorry, distance to target is not a vector2. It is a float. And we'll set it equal to 0, just like that. Okay, so those are the static variables that we're going to need. Now we're going to want to add the ready function to this script. So I'm going to say func ready. And all we're going to do in here is just set our target location equal to the global position. But actually we don't have a global position right now. And this brings up one change that we need to make. So by default, this is extending a cutscene action, and a cutscene action is extending node. I want to make this extend a node 2D because as I was building this prior to this, I was trying to store that target location as an export variable, and then I would have to tweak the values, and then I wanted to display where it was. And it's like, well, why do all that when you could just have an object that just you can drag around the world and you can see where it is, right? And then we'll just grab the location from that. So we need to use this node 2D to have access to some of those variables because a regular node does not have a position, but a node 2D does. So we'll go, once we've updated this and saved it, we'll go back to our script over here. And now we should be able to set this equal to the global position because it's now extending from node 2D. And the next thing I want to do as we start setting this up is I want to just include the draw function so that we can make this draw a circle when we're in the editor so we can see where it is, like a little target. And in order for this to work in editor, we need to make sure that we also are using the @tool decorator here so that this will be able to be allowed to run in our editor. And then we'll just come down here to the bottom of our script and we're going to just use this _draw. This is one of those built-in functions. And what draw does is it just lets you draw shapes right to the screen. And this can draw both in editor and in the game. And so because we want this for purposes of just helping us make the editing of these nodes easier, we're only going to draw while we're in the editor. So we'll do if engine ending. Oh my gosh. If engine, I got to scoot my keyboard over, I think. If engine.isEditor hint will tell us if we're in the editor, and if we are, then we're going to draw 2 circles. And draw circle is also a function that requires certain node types. So node 2D controls can draw a circle. A regular node can't use the draw circle command, or I don't think any draw command. So we're going to draw a circle, and we're just going to draw it at vector2.0. That's the kind of like the location of the center of the circle. Then we need a size. The first circle we'll draw will be just a radius of 3. So size, radius. And then we can provide a color. So I'm going to give it a color of color.red. Now, if we save this, I wonder if it's already working. we've got a move. Let's go ahead and save, and let's reload this scene. I guess I can go up to scene, reload saved scene. Is it working yet? It's not working. I wonder why it's not working. Well, let's look back at our script. There's no errors in here, right? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and reload my project. I don't normally have to reload projects this often, but sometimes we do. Okay, I've reloaded. Let's check it out. Still no dot. And I'm not quite sure why. Do we have the right script attached here? I'm noticing I don't see any of my export variables. Cutscene underscore move. Let's just delete these and try adding them again. Yeah, I don't actually have any animations, so I don't know why I got that. Cutscene action move. Boink. Curiouser and curiouser. This one's got all of the settings that I'm expecting here, and we've got a transform. You can see, oh, there it is. Okay. Boink, and it's drawing the dot. Cool. I'm not sure what happened here. What is this? This is my NPC wander behavior. Apparently I had moved that. So I'm just going to move that back. In fact, I can just reset it to 0. Okay. Cool. There's our cutscene action, our little move action. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's set up a couple of these. I'm going to take that one and I'm going to duplicate it again and move it down here. So you can see it's nice to just draw that circle so you can see where it's going. And, you know, if we wanted to, we could come in here and add additional draw calls. So we could say like another draw circle, for example, and same location, because we just need to draw this at the origin. This time though, maybe we give it a larger radius, like 10. And then for the color, I'm actually going to just define a new color because I want it to be kind of transparent. And I'm going to just say red. We're going to give 1 on the red, and then 0, 0, and then I'm going to do 0.5. I just wanted to be able to provide an alpha. Otherwise, you could do color.red. Now, there's some other fun parameters on this. So we can say the next you can see is it filled, true or false? I'm going to say false. And then if we do that, then we also want to provide a width for the outline. And so I'm going to say 1.0 and save that. And I guess let's reload this scene. There we go. Now it'll initialize those scripts properly. Okay, so there we go. So now it looks like a target. You don't have to make it look like a target, but that's just a fun little thing we can do. So we've got these 2 move points, and obviously we haven't scripted them up yet, but we've made it so that we can see them, and we've got all of the variables showing now in the inspector. And just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and just take this NPC and assign it as the object to move. And I probably could have done that to both at once, but here we go. Let me do it again. Okay, so now we're going to try and move our NPC. Now for fun, before we continue scripting, I want to add another object that we can move. So let's go ahead and just in our scene real quick, I'm going to add, let's add a pot. No, not create new node. Shift Control A is what I want. And add a pot scene. There we go. Okay, now this pot is up here. Drag it down. And by the way, I'm not sure we needed to reload earlier when I wasn't seeing these little targets. I think they were just up here and I didn't think to pan. But anyways, we're going to have this pot and we'll just stick it over here. I want to make it move as well. So if we come in with this dialog action move, and let's just maybe duplicate one of these again. And on this third one, I'm going to replace this NPC with the pot. Boink. There we go. And then we'll be able to move that pot with this other target here. So this new third one, I'm going to just move this down here. Okay, so you can see we've got 3 different move things. They're each referencing some, a different thing. Like one's referencing the pot, 2 of them are referencing the NPC, and then we'll go through and configure how they work differently as well once we start hooking up the code. Okay, so now that we've got this scene set up and we've got all these things to test and preview, we really need to finish our script. The first couple things I want to do on the script as far as building out the functionality is I want to create 2 little functions that are going to help us get some of the measurements, calculations, and other things that we need. And so the first one we'll use and create, I guess, is going to be get move direction. Okay. In this function, we'll first check if we have an object, otherwise we're going to get an error. So we'll say if object to move, then we'll come down here and we'll just say move direction equals, and then we're going to calculate the direction. And this is going to be calculated based off of the object to move getting its global position, which is a vector2, and then we're going to use the vector2's direction to, and then we just need to provide another vector2 to get a direction, right? And we're going to use the target location value as that other vector2. Now we could use the position of this node. The reason we're using this target location, this global position, is because we're going to just set this at the beginning. Then if for any reason our code moves or these objects move because of inheritance, maybe a parent moves, they won't be offset, right? We're going to capture the location they are when the scene starts, which is going to match the location that we set them in the editor. Okay? So that's why we have this target location value. Now, the second function that we want to create here as we're getting started is going to be a calculating the distance to our target. So I'm going to call it that. Okay, and this one is quite simple. In fact, you know what? Let's not make this return void. We can have this return the value, so this should return a float. And then we'll say return, and then we're just going to do a very similar calculation like we had with the get move direction. We'll say object to move dot global position dot, and then we're going to say distance to, and then we'll provide the target location as our target there. Now, the reason we're making a function for this is so that if we call it multiple times, we don't have to type this in, which I know the name I gave it is kind of long, so you could shorten it if you want, but this makes it so that it's kind of self-documenting. I like that. You guys can do what you want there, though. Okay, cool. We've got those functions set up, ready for the next step. Okay, let's go ahead now and look at our play function. All of our nodes that extend this cutscene action need to have a play function, and this play function is responsible for playing the action, right, and eventually emitting that finished signal when it's done so that our cutscene node knows when we're done doing the action that we're assigned. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to check if we have an object to move, again like we did previously. So if we've got an object to move, we'll come down here and run this section of code. Else, if we don't have an object to move, then we're just going to emit our finished signal. So we'll say finished.emit, and this signal does not exist on this class. It exists in the parent class, this one that we're extending, okay? Okay, there we go. Now what we're going to do with object to move, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Like I mentioned previously, we're going to use a tween to move the object, and then we can just tween it. Now we will build in some extra conditions because we've got a couple things that could be dynamically different here. One is we've got options for the different timing methods, right? So if we pick a speed or duration, we want to do our calculations a little bit differently. The other difference is that our object to move may be an NPC, and because we know certain things about an NPC, we're going to build into this script the ability to animate him if it is an NPC, and if not, if it's like our pot or any other object, then we'll just simply move it, okay? So let's start with this by doing a couple things. So first off, we want our object to not be paused during this cutscene. So we can say object to move dot process mode. We can set the process mode to always so that it'll just work. So right there. Okay. And then let's go ahead and calculate our distance to target. So we'll set distance target equal to, and then we'll just call this calculate distance to target. And then we can also get our move direction like that. Okay. So those are just basic setup things that we'll do every time this cutscene action plays. And then let's go ahead and deal with our timing variables here. So we're going to say if timing, let's see, if timing method equals method.speed, maybe let's start there. For some reason, it's not liking this, but let's go ahead and finish our block so that it does. Okay. Now, because we're doing a tween, tweens require us to pass in a few parameters, right? And one of those is the duration. So regardless of whether we pick speed or duration, ultimately we're going to be using that duration value. So what we do here is if the movement method that we select is speed, then we need to take the speed value that we enter in the inspector and use that to recalculate or calculate the duration. So we'll say our move duration is going to be equal to the distance to target divided by the move speed, right? And that's going to give us a move duration, just a simple little physics type of calculation there. And then else, if it's not, then what we can do, because we still want the move speed if it's an NPC, so we can help calculate the walking animation. So we still need to calculate the move speed. So we'll say move speed equals, and then we'll do, it's almost the same formula, distance to target divided by move duration. There we go. And with that simple statement, we're going to update the other variable accordingly. What this means is that when you select a timing method, like in this case duration, then we only are going to care about the duration here, and we'll update the move speed based on that, and vice versa. If you select speed, then we're going to look at the speed and calculate the duration. Okay? Now, we're going to have special logic here if it's an NPC, but I don't want to do that right now. I just want to get to the meat of this so we can start testing it out. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a new tween. So our tween is obviously a new tween object is going to equal a new tween, which we can use this create tween function to create it. Okay. So we're going to get this tween, and then we just need to define how it's going to work. Remember, we've got these different timing methods and transition types. So we've got transition type and easing method. Let's go ahead and configure those. So we can take our tween and say set ease and just set it to the easing method. And then we can also do the same for our transition type. And to do this, it's tween.set underscore trans for transition. And we'll say transition type, just like that. And then we can actually just do our tween here. So we're going to be tweening just the position or the global position of this object. So we'll say tween.tween property, and the property, or first we got to provide the object, right? So object to tween or object to move. And then we're going to tell it which property we're going to tween. And you can see we've got global position in here. We'll use that. It accesses it via that string name. Then we provide our target location. And lastly, we provided the move duration. Okay, which we've already set or calculated above. There we go. So that's going to make our tween happen. And if I were to save this and run my scene here and test this out, we should actually see, boom, we should see an error apparently. So what does it say? Script inherits from node 2D, so it can't be assigned to an object of type node. Did we drop something in that is a node here? Oh, it's our cutscene animation. So this is what happens when we don't think this through completely. So these cutscene animation things here, they were created back when we defined it as extending node, and so that's what these are. And so they're just kind of messed up. So what we can do is let's just add our animation. Whoop. Cutscene action animation. You can see it now is extending node 2D. If I create that, this one should be good. This one's bad. So what I want though is I still want to configure it the same. So I'm just going to real quick copy the fade to black. Boink. And then I can delete this. I do need to get a reference to that animation player though. So let's see, animation player. Let's select this. Grab the animation player. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that one that's configured correctly and bring it down to this other dialog cutscene. And we'll take this first one, delete it, take this new one, and this needs to be fade to normal. We probably should have done this when we changed them, but I didn't remember that that was going to happen. So hopefully this works now. I should be able to run. Let's see if it works. Okay, so far so good. Fades. Talks, and then next should be something moving, probably the NPC. Boink, it did move him. Okay. Now this didn't work properly because, or fully I should say, because we have it set to sequential, and so it was going to do, in order, one after the other, but we never have a way to emit that one of these is finished. So let's go ahead and go back to our script and let's add that. So let's go to our action move script here. And what we can do is let's just add a tween callback. So we've used this before, right? A tween callback is like a callback function that you want to call when it's done, I like to say. So we're going to say tween callback, and then we need to provide a function, and we haven't created this yet, but we'll just say on tween finished like that, and copy this, and then we'll come down here and we'll make this function. Okay. Now on tween finished is just going to call, this callback doesn't pass any parameters or anything. So we can just simply come in here and make a couple updates. One is we want to potentially disable the object from moving, so setting its process mode back to inherit, so it'll be paused again. So we'll just say object to move dot process mode, and then we're going to pick not disabled. We don't want disabled. We want inherit, like that. Okay, so it'll inherit from the parent, and then we can just emit the finish signal. Now, because we're going to be doing unique things with the NPC, we're going to come back here and say, you know, if it's an NPC, what are we going to do? There's some extra stuff, okay? But for now, this should at least allow it to continue to progress. So let's go ahead and test this one more time. So hopefully we should see the NPC move to his 2 locations, and then the pot should move. Awesome, very good. Okay, so we got it to happen in sequence, and it continued on through the dialogue, and everything's looking pretty good. Now, this is a good point for us to come in here and look at and test some of these different transition types, and so we'll play around with that. So just for fun, I'm going to take these dialogue cutscenes. I just kind of want to move this one first in the stack. And see, I got that dumb bug. Let's go away from the scene and come back. It did move it, so we're looking good. And I'm going to give this a name so it's easy to remember. I'm going to just call this move. Okay, easy to recognize it. I'm going to put this first just so that we can more rapidly iterate over testing these things. And I'm going to come in here and I want to select each of these and let's try something. Let's take this first action where we're moving the NPC, and let's change this from linear to quadratic. And I want this to be duration based so that we can kind of see it nice and slow. I'm going to give it 2 seconds. Okay. And then we'll take this second movement action. What did we do here? Quadratic, ease in, out. Let's take the second one and let's leave it on speed, and let's pick something fun. Bounce and elastic are both quite interesting. Let's do bounce. And this one is speed, 200. Okay, that's good. And then we'll take this pot and we're going to change this from linear to, I don't know, we've tried quadratic. Let's do an exponential transition, and we can leave it on. Actually, let's change it. Let's just do ease in. Okay. And what do we have this set to? Duration, half a second. I think that's fine. So now we're going to see that these are going to move differently. Previously, they moved with very strict, very straight and rigid movements. So now they should be a bit more dynamic, or maybe a lot more. Okay, let's talk to this dude. See how he... Okay, that was kind of funny. I think the bounce movement was kind of goofy because of how quickly it happened, but that first movement was nice because it was slow. You could see what was happening where it sped up and then it slowed down, right? That's the effect of the ease in and out. And a quadratic transition is kind of a nice and smooth one. Now, we couldn't see these others because they moved so dang quickly. So I'm going to change the duration of the pot to 1 second, double the duration. And just for sake of demonstration, I think the duration is an easier way to handle this than speed. Obviously, if you have like, my NPC should always move at about 200 speed, then you might want to use speed. But for this case, I think duration is good so we can see what's happening. 1.5 seconds. Let's put 1.5 on all of these. Okay, and I'm going to save this and run it again. Okay, ease in and out. You see how that bounce is working? It's kind of doing something goofy. And then the pot, it just sped up and then just stopped really abruptly. Okay, but you can use that abrupt stop if you need it to feel like it's maintaining speed, but it's changing direction. So you might want it to ease in on the first movement, and then like, let's duplicate this and put it down here maybe, and have it so it's going to continue to be the pot moving down here, and we'll make it ease out. And we could try this one more time. And you can see how that worked. Okay, now that's kind of fun, and that's just testing the sequential playback mode. Let's go ahead and do parallel. Now, parallel won't work well with these guys each having multiple destinations, right? It's only going to play one. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove the second action for each item. So the pot and the NPC will each have one target location. So now these should happen at the same time. Very good. And that worked. Okay. Cool. So, right here, we could almost just stop the tutorial, except for the fact that our NPC is pretty static and dumb when he's moving, because he just is like sliding across the floor. Works great for something like the pot. And so maybe you have things in your scene. Obviously, you could animate the pot with the animation player. The benefit comes into something like this NPC that is moving and needs to maybe go to a certain location before you begin the dialogue. I don't know. You could do something like that, right? And you could do the same with the player. So this kind of movement script really is more ideal for dynamic objects as opposed to the static one like the pot. But, we're using a pot as a prop to just demonstrate how it might work. And you might have things in the scenery that need to move and slide in and out that you don't want to easily do with the animation player, etc. But now that we've got that working, I want to dive into the script again, and I want to update it for this NPC. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to set this back to sequential. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to duplicate this little movement item. And we're going to just make him move a couple places. So we're going to move the NPC to 2 spots. I'm going to set it to linear because I think that's a little bit more appropriate for an NPC for this type of action. Okay. But there we go. We've got 2 locations. They both have a similar move duration, but they're different distance. So I think actually for this, it might be nice to say move speed and set it to 200. And then maybe this second one, we want to double the speed at which he moves. Okay. So let's just demo this before we add what we're going to do with the NPC. Let's see what this looks like. So he should just move up and then down. And you can see he moved fairly quickly. 200 move speed is, I guess, pretty fast. Is that right? Let's see. Let's make that 100. There we go. That was more noticeable. So we've got a slower move speed of 100 and then a quicker move speed of 400. Okay. That's going to give us a little bit better of a base to test what we're going to do. So what we're going to do with the NPC is we're going to hook it up so that we can animate him, change the direction that he's facing while he moves. Okay, so it'll be a little bit more believable and work better for your game. And then this could also be used as a template, maybe not for movement, but maybe you want to build a new cutscene action type that's going to just play back an animation on the NPC. So an example might be you have like a surprise animation, which we don't in this game, but maybe you do. And so you could have him walk to a spot and then do his like surprise jump and then the dialogue starts. Okay, something like that. What we're going to do here in this little bit of code is going to help you figure out how you could do that. Now, this movement for the NPC is important that we've also done this process mode to always, because we're going to be manipulating the animation player. And if the animation player is, the child of an object that's paused, then it's not going to play back the animation, right? So that's why this is ultra critical for these next few steps. So if it's an NPC, let's replace that comment with the actual code. So if object to move is NPC. Now, if you have lots of different types of things that you want to do this with, then you might want to just make it its own action type, like a move NPC as opposed to a move prop, because you don't want to have too many ifs on different object types. But for this simple example, I think this is fine. Okay, so it's up to you if you decide you need to move this out into 2 separate scripts. But of course, the guts could be the same for everything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if it's an NPC, then let's go ahead. I don't want to have to reference object to move over and over because that's a lot to type. So I'm going to just say variable of NPC of type NPC equals object to move. Okay, that's just going to give me a nice simple NPC variable to work with. Now we had to do a few things because our NPC has behavior scripts and things like that built in. So first I want to, because we've unpaused the NPC, I want to make sure he doesn't start doing any of these. It doesn't look like he will, but let's just be safe and let's set our do behavior equal to false. That's a variable we've got already built into our NPC system. And then I want to change the NPC's state because that's how we're controlling his animation. So we're going to set his state to walk. And I know magic strings isn't always the best way to do this, but that's how we've built it. So we'll just set it to the string name of walk. Magic strings, I say that because we have no way of verifying that we spelled this correctly other than testing it. Okay, so that can be kind of cumbersome. Again, when you've got something simple, if it works, it works. There's no need to make it any more fancy. But if you've got something really complicated and you've got lots of different states, there might be a better alternative to setting the state like a string. Maybe use enums or something like that. We need to set the direction. Our NPC script has a direction variable, and this direction is used to help him face the right way. So by setting this, it's going to make that work here. We're going to say our direction on the NPC is equal to our move direction. But there's some functionality that needs to happen for the NPC to respond to that direction change. So let's call that. We actually have a function built in, and it's called update direction, I think. And we'll provide this target location. It needs a vector too of where he's facing, I guess. And then almost lastly, we want to play. We want the NPC to play his animation. So because we've changed all these values, we've changed his state and we've changed the direction. Now we need to update the animation. And he does have, again, the NPC has an update animation function built into it. So we'll just call that. And that's going to look at all those values we just set and play the proper animation. So he should be walking, facing the direction that's most related to the target he's heading to. Lastly, though, we do want to integrate this last thing, and that's this this animation scale. So we've got our NPC. Let's grab our animation, which is a reference to the animation player, and then we want to set the speed scale. Okay, and the speed scale will be equal to our move speed that we've set in this script divided by the animation speed factor. So what that's going to do is we're going to look at how like the move speed and divide it by the animation speed, and that's going to become our new speed scale for the animation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's test it out. We should see that the NPC now will play a walk animation. Sure did. Okay. Now the downside is I think we kind of locked him into a weird state down here. He actually reset pretty good, but you see how he's like now he's got that really fast walk speed because for that second part of the movement we set the movement really high because his move speed was 400. So take 400 divided by 40 and you're going to get what, 10? So then now his animation speed scale is set to 10. So it's 10 times faster than normal. So what we need to do is we just need to respond to these. And I had already mentioned earlier that we're going to update our on-tween finished, right? If it's an NPC. So let's go ahead and do that now. And that's going to clean this up. And let me just come up here actually and just grab this. I'm going to grab the whole thing real quick. And then we can remove what we don't need. And the indentation is wrong here because I pulled it from code that was another level deep. So just make sure you update that so that it will work properly. Okay, so if object to move is an NPC, then let's do the same kinds of things. We'll set do behavior back to true. We can set the state to idle, perhaps, so that once the cutscene is done, he'll be in the idle state. And of course, that might get changed by another move action, but should always get set back. Move direction, I don't know that we have anything we can do there. And I don't think we need to call either of these as well because they'll kind of naturally happen. Now, instead of calculating a new speed scale, we'll just set the speed scale back to 1 so that it's at its standard default. And this should be sufficient. No, wait, I'm missing one thing. We want to set our NPC's process mode back to inherit. Like that. That way he'll go back to the paused state. Okay. And actually some of this stuff almost seems unnecessary because it didn't look like he started walking around or anything on his own, but I don't know. This is maybe just a precaution at this point. So if we run this one more time, things should look a little bit better when we're done with the cutscene. Moves slow, moves fast, the pot, some talking. And there we go. Now he's back to moving and animating at his normal speed. And voila. And because this cutscene is kind of dynamic, it doesn't matter where he moves. He'll still go to that spot. And it'll always just kind of work. So there we have it. Thank you for following along. I hope you guys have continued to learn from this. I'm probably going to put a wrap on working with this cutscene tutorial, mini section of this series right here. But go ahead and drop comments. One that might be wanted and really needed is an action specific to our hero so that we can move him and get animations out of him. And that one's going to be a little bit more complex. So I've been thinking about that. I just haven't built it yet. And if you guys comment that you want it pretty badly, then that'll probably motivate me to get it done sooner rather than later. But otherwise, thank you for following along. Please subscribe to my channel, drop a comment below, give it a like, all of this stuff. And as always, we'll see you next time.